All right, everybody. Welcome to the ADE Artist Panel. Let's introduce ourselves real quick, just in case people don't know who you are. Let's go ahead and start with you, Protostar.
All right, Protostar, Alex, obviously Monstercat artist, based in the UK. Jordan.
Jordan, one half of KUURO, based in Amsterdam. I'm the European half. Glad to be here.
My name is Luke. I am the American half. I'm based in LA.
Is it my turn?
It is.
Hi, I'm Dillon, one half of Eminence, and I'm sorry I can't put my hands down.
It's all good. And my name is Galileo. I'm the community manager at Sansar, and to my right is
Lacey, marketing coordinator.
There it is.
There it is.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. We've got some questions for you here. Just to open it up, let's talk. And has anybody on panel? Have any of you had any VR experience prior to this? If so, what was it?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a Vive, and I was here for the last thing that you guys, well, not the last one, but the, I think it was the first one. The first gig you guys did. I forget, it was like with Stephen Walking, a fixer, all that.
That's right.
Yeah, the common, I think. But, so yeah, I that. And, I mean, that's a Vive for like maybe a year now. And it's good for me.
Yeah, no, mine only goes as far as like I've played with what's it called, Super Hot. That was really fun.
Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah. I haven't had a lot of time with it, but definitely like to do a bit more of that. And then I tried a bit of Sansar in VR, but that is something I'm definitely gonna have to get used to a bit more. Like I got nauseous from actually like walking around like that. I guess that was too much, but like standing still in one spot, that's really cool. I think it'd be
the same feeling.
Yeah,
I just get super nauseous. That has nothing to do with the game.
You get used to it. Yeah. I used to get sick, but then like when I started, actually tried out Minecraft in VR, which is actually pretty good fun. And then after we played a bunch of that, I got you. Jordan, you got that as well.
Yeah. No, I imagine that like if I would have done that, it would have had the same effect until I actually get it. Just the fact that like I was standing still, but then move around in the world that you see around you, just really confusing at first, but it's good fun for sure.
Out of curiosity, have you? So there's sea legs, like getting your seats is like a thing, right? You get boat, and some people get nauseous on it. But do you all get nauseous when on boats? Are you on boats often?
Not really. No. I mean,
I don't. Or sorry, I get like sick. I don't get seasick, and in VR, I feel fine. It's like weird that
really
all those kind of don't correlate with each other.
Who gets airsick?
I get airsick.
I've never heard of that, dude.
I mean,
they do have
on airplanes.
They do have sick bags in an airplane for a reason.
Yeah.
I get really airsick. I always have to take a gravel, but in VR, I'm like fine.
It's just a skyboat. There you go.
It's a sky.
Speaking of sky, actually, and in theory, the sky is the limit to what we can really do inside of VR space.
Good puns.
Clever.
But what are some of the ways you think that the tech can be used to like really enhance a person's experience, in particular the music in the future?
I think like the space for like interactive like live presence, like concerts and stuff, has definitely got a lot of potential. Like I've seen some really cool things happening where like tracking someone's full body without any need for like a headset or controllers, and so that replicating it in that's pretty cool for like accessibility across the world for certain like festivals and gigs and stuff like that. So I think it's got some good potential in the future for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you look at this panel, I think it's we're all in completely different places, but it's in this way to bring people together and interact with each other. And
yeah, it's really cool.
It's all still kind of like in early stages, I guess, but it's gonna be really cool to see how it evolves and just gets better and more of a smooth experience, I guess.
Yeah.
I can't wait to like. Sorry, you first.
No, go ahead.
I'm just excited to perform more on VR because I think it's really cool that we can all attend a festival like together.
Yeah.
Yeah, without leaving.
Absolutely. Without leaving your jammies.
Yeah.
Going further into the future, as like the overhead for VR gets smaller and smaller, I think that's where it's really going to shine. And like the less actual gear you have to wear, and the more automatic the process can be of literally just being in your living room and having like a body scan or something like that, and then you're in VR. That's where it's really at.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
One of the things we like to tell when we have folks perform, you do a whole world tour in a single night, which I think was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
Did you see that? Did you watch Black Mirror? And if so, did you the Miley Cyrus episode where she forms? She basically does the same thing.
Oh, that's the only one I haven't seen.
She's like a hologram.
Yeah, she's hologram. Yeah. Okay, so do you think music performances in virtual reality will have a larger impact on the industry in the years to come? I guess that has to be the next logical question.
I mean, I can definitely see that. It's just so big still. I think and like for a lot of people, that it probably doesn't even come to mind for them that like this is a thing that you could do. But as more and more people kind of get used to the idea and the experience becomes a bit smoother, like it's already quite easy for people to step in, like I don't have a VR headset, but I can still participate in this and feel like a part of it.
I love it.
Obviously it's a ton of fun to actually have the headset, but yeah, it's already so easily accessible. I think that as more people kind of experiment with it and figure out what you can do with it, I think it's going to be really exciting.
Absolutely. It's definitely like being able to go on what Galileo said, the world tour in a night, and it's very good for folks with like social anxiety or hey, you can be in your Spider-Man pajamas and nobody has to know.
Probably not right now. It's like so funny.
Hang on, guys. I'll be right.
There's no webcam thing enabled, right?
No. Oh no, he's not.
There are cameras in these trackers.
I'll be right back after the break.
Back to music questions as well. How did each of you get into music? In particular, how did you get into the Monstercat community? What's the story on that?
Mine's quite funny, I guess. I mean, I've always done music throughout my life. I've learned like piano, flute, clarinet, back when I was younger, violin, and then I moved on to guitar a bit. And then back when I was in like year 7, I started learning more and dropped off of piano, which I kind of regret dropping off piano. But and then when I went into like GCSE, there was like some stuff to do with like music software, which I kind of liked. And then when we have A level, so in the US, that's like the step before going to college or university. So we had A level for 2 years, and I took physics, maths, design and technology, and then music technology, which is just basically like working with software, like music software and doing stuff like that. And I didn't even like electronic music at the time, but I got introduced to it by a friend. I think the first track I listened to were Zed's Dead, Eyes on the Remix, and what else was there? I know there was like a bunch of million tracks, like Gold Dust and stuff like that. And that's what got me into like dubstep and stuff back then. And then I just sat there at the end of school, like after my classes, after school, like just trying to figure out how to make a yoy bass and stuff like that, like the classic. Yeah, exactly. Just like whacking a low pass on the saw with a bit crush on it, and I was like, wow, well, this is so cool. And I started making some stuff, and then I went to uni for engineering, and during that I was making music on the side. And actually during that time I was doing YouTube gaming stuff. Like that was back when Minecraft was like up, and I actually had a channel back then, and Monstercat also had a gaming channel. So I actually managed to get like a director status on their channel, which means I uploaded stuff there. So I had contact via for Monstercat via that. And then so when I made some stuff, I sent it in to John, who's going quantum. And first off, he didn't really like the stuff I sent in, but then I just kept trying and trying. I sent him something else, and he was one night, and he really liked it. I sent him 2 tracks, and he wanted to sign up on the spot. So, and that was at 7 a.m. my time. So luckily, for my career, I actually stayed up until 9 a.m. in the morning talking to John on Facebook Messenger, getting my music signed. So Yeah, it's always a favorite memory of mine. Like, just so stuff happens. I guess it's just lucky timing a lot of the time, and I guess just being there at the right time, right place really helps.
So it started with Minecraft, as you're saying.
Basically.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah.
No, that's a really awesome way. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just asking if I'm saying I can't see.
You're definitely.
Continue.
So I guess we were just asking how people got into music.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jordan, do you want to go?
Yeah, so for me, it was this very specific moment. I guess as like a kid, like 3, 4, 5-year-old, I was already just really into music. My dad kind of brought electronic music into our household through like kind of early day rave stuff. So it was pretty hard. It's like this I don't think it exists anymore. This concept called Thunderdome, which is something that was more about like hard dance and kind of like hardstyle, hardcore, that kind of stuff. But as this little energetic kid, I loved running around the room on that stuff. So it's kind of like where it began. And then later on, I think 2003, 2004-ish, my dad gave this DVD of Chess Swing Concert as a gift to a friend of mine. And like before we were gonna head over and give it to him for his birthday, we were playing it at home, and I just kind of walked by, hop on it, and like start watching. Wow, this is so cool! Like not just the production and the insanely big crowd, but like the music itself as well. Like the music itself intrigued me and almost instantly made me want to figure it out myself and like figure out how I could do that myself. So that's kind of where the interest of it started, and quite quickly my parents found me a piece of music software to play around with, which was it was called Music 2000.
Oh.
It was this. It was really funny, and like I have all of the MP3s of the stuff that I used to make with that as like a kid. So it's fun to listen back to that every once in a while.
Those?
I want to hear.
That'd be awesome if you release those.
I think like back in the day before I started actually like signing stuff to labels, I mainly uploaded to YouTube, and I think I put some of that on my YouTube channel, but I don't think that's around anymore. Like I just have them on my computer. I'm never going to get rid of them, but I don't know if I'm actually going to release them either. Maybe find a place to play them for people.
We could do a listening party.
Yeah, or remix them into a new song. That'd actually be cute. Like
that would actually, that'd be kind of fun. Like full circle.
Exactly.
Just kind of rework the first thing I ever did. But yeah, no, it started quite early for me, and then it just picked up quite quickly. It went from just kind of doing fun things for myself on YouTube to signing my first track when I was 15.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I went through a bunch of different labels, a bunch of different styles, and then I like kind of started out with trance, then moved into more progressive house, electronic, or electro house kind of stuff.
That's how I know actually progressive house.
Yeah, that dude, it's so funny. There's so many people now that I know through Monstercat, basically, that I then find out know me for my stuff before Monstercat.
Yeah.
Like when I was doing solo stuff as Juventa, and
I think I knew you through that Phoenix Coven did you.
Yeah, probably that was the remix I did Move Until I was insane. Yeah. Yeah, and at some point, I was in America for a show, which is where I met Luke, like a little dinner before, and I think it was on like 1 or 2 hours that we got to spend together. Right? It was super brief.
Yeah, it was pretty brief.
Then I had to go to a show. You weren't there, I think.
No, I didn't
we
stay.
we just kept on talking like afterwards when I went back home, and found out that we had this mutual interest in bass music. And well, if you want to talk a little more about that before I fill all of that stuff about KUURO up myself, talk a bit about how you started.
Sure. let's see. I was classically piano trained from a pretty young age. I started when I was about 8. Then stopped, I think, when I was about 13 because I couldn't stand any of my teachers that I had. They would never let me play whatever I wanted. It was always like, let's go by the book. Let's do this.
Yeah,
and I started off being...
A lot of people quit.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I started off being trained by ear. So, like, I would just hear a piece of music and then go over the piano and then start working on stuff. And then my mom put me into lessons, and I just never got to play what I wanted to play. I do regret stopping so early because, like, I'm super rusty anytime I go to piano now. But, like, classical composition, I guess, that was instilled in me at a young age definitely paid off later when I decided I wanted to make electronic music after hearing a remix of a Coldplay song, actually, on the radio.
Which one?
And it was Talk. And the remix was by this guy named Junkie XL, who's kind of like a...
Junkie, yes.
Yeah, he's kind of an old head now, but...
Shout out Dutch people.
Yeah. They were ahead of the curve way back then. And I was like, God, like how do people do this? And so I was like Googling around how to, make dance music and stuff, and found a lot of people were talking about this program called FL Studio. And this is like back in the day, LimeWire was the thing, if anyone remembers that.
Yep.
And so I was super young and obviously couldn't afford like all of these audio programs and stuff. So I totally purchased FL Studio.
The thumbs up.
When I was super young.
Internet's coming.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was like a kid. I was a freaking kid. So, yeah, and then around 2008, like, advent of YouTube was really coming to its own, and people started, posting tutorials on, like, how to do it. And so which is much better than me just guessing, how do I do this? How do I do this? And so after people started posting tutorials on YouTube, I just went ham into the YouTube tutorials and kind of just self-taught my way through there. Went through my whole phase of working on like trance and progressive stuff and signing with a bunch of different labels and things like that. Yeah, that was my old alias. And then, as Jordan said, one day we met up in Seattle when he had a tour over here, and after he went back, we just kept talking about, doing something totally different what we were already doing. And next time he came over to the States, or I think it was Vancouver, like a Vancouver show, and then you came back over to my place, which is across the border in the States, for I don't know how long it was, but yes, that's where KUURO started. And then we spent like half a year trying to come up with the sound that we wanted, and then once we had it right, we demoed it to Monstercat, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
So,
hey, you joined us.
hey.
We can mega fun.
Yeah, so how I started was I was taught guitar in when I was a kid by my dad, and he showed me how important the guitar was because it was super illegal in China back in the day to play guitar because it was a quote unquote North American art.
Very relevant.
We only learned Chinese flute and stuff like that. Anyway, he taught me how to play guitar, a simple scale. And then I kind of quit because it hurt my fingers and I was really young. And in high school, I was really overweight and I was trying to impress the girls. So I learned how to play guitar using Ultimate Guitar for tabs, learned how to read that stuff, and ended up going to audio school, Art Institute for audio production. Didn't like dancing back then. I was just playing guitar and singing at the time. But I heard I Remember by Mouse and Cascade, and that just changed life. It was just unreal. And started producing then. I learned Logic, then found FL Studio after I graduated, and I just fell in love. Moved to Toronto because the school that I was in found me a job there as a audio engineer, assistant. It's just a fast way of saying you're a runner and you just grab some water for everybody. And that's when I met John, going Quantum before Monster had even started. And we actually Going Quantum originally was John, me, and Kaz, the other half of Eminence. And we used to DJ every Monday on a live stream platform called Ustream and Justin TV at the time. Yeah, you guys remember that?
I do.
So we used to do that every Monday. We called it Massive Days, and we used to just like DJ live on there. And then after me and Kaz started producing trance together, and Going Quantum and Afixa were really good friends, and they were talking about creating Monstercat. And they're like, we want to sign one of your trance records as like one of the first releases. I believe it was Week. And that's how we got affiliated with Monstercat. We've been releasing since 2011 under Monstercat.
So all of you are Monstercat veterans, basically.
Yeah.
At least a couple of years. Well, and Eminence, I sort of have a question for you two. What is your workflow like living apart from your other half? I mean, you sort of described it a little bit, but how is it different than working on your own?
I mean, it helps. It makes everything really easy when you're using the same DAW and a lot of the same synths, and you all have similar sample libraries. That makes sharing project files back and forth really easy. But more important than that, it's about having like a collective vision of like what you want things to sound like, I think.
And a DAW, just for folks, a digital.
Oh yeah,
audio
digital audio workstation. It's just the program that you use to make. Oh, we lost Alex.
Oh boy. What?
All right, I'll be back. Hey, nothing happened.
No more magic tricks, please.
It's almost snapped.
The nice thing is when you lose somebody in VR, it's much less serious than losing somebody in real life.
I'm trying to get my camera to not be behind the curtain because I feel like I'm sneaking in all the time. That's camera's back here.
I have to do that too.
Okay, so having a similar vision, having the same tools, very easy. Well, okay, that's like. So that's how you.
Yeah, I guess for in our case, the only thing that is a bit tricky sometimes is the difference in time zones. But even that works in a way where there's almost, it's almost 24/7 that someone is awake. It's not like one of us is always out.
Especially when, I don't know, when your profession is working for yourself and being a musician, you can choose to be a total idiot and go to bed at 5 a.m. every day.
That's us.
So I'm up during European times anyway.
Like, I have to say, to be a musician.
It's a borderline prerequisite.
Yeah, I think.
Or do you want to introduce yourself before we continue going?
Yeah, definitely. Hey guys, sorry I was late. I had to take a phone call. But it was Ori, and I take phone calls for a living. I work at Monstercat on the little team, on the music team. I work with this, lovely creative gem, I guess, to my roots, and just sort of help them in their day-to-day. These guys are all like incredibly creative individuals. What my team really does is comes in and supports them on the back end, make sure that the awesome music they're making gets heard by people like yourselves, setting up opportunities for them like this. I got into music probably in the same way that everyone else did, just coming from the fan side, going to lots of shows, obsessing over artists like Deadmau5 and Daft Punk, and then kind of the usual suspects. And then I got really frustrated in my early 20s and didn't really know what I wanted to do career-wise, and I stumbled across a company called Monstercat and met the team when they moved out to Vancouver, and slowly just kind of became more and more involved with the organization, came on doing some very basic data entry work, and kind of rose up as the team and company grew to a role where I could really shape music campaigns and artist careers. And that's me.
Ah, very cool.
Yeah, Ori.
Nice.
Awesome.
So we were in the middle. So Eminence, let's go ahead and get your answer to the being far away. I know that Kaz isn't here, but what are sort of the challenges you face?
The challenge that we face is usually playing shows, because I like to refresh our set often, and it's hard to practice a set together. But production-wise, it's really easy because same as KUURO, we have the same DAW, we have the same sample library, same plugins, and if you save, there's a function on FL where you can just save as a zip file. So I literally just Dropbox it. It takes less than like 30 seconds for him to get the project exactly what I had, and then you can just open out that end. So it's actually pretty easy. Other than playing shows, is super easy.
Protostar, we got a question for you from, I think it might have been Dan at Monstercat, and he says this is an important question to ask you, so I hope you're ready. He says to ask you, we hear you're growing a beard in real life. How's that going for you?
Yeah, going quite well, thank you. First stage is quite itchy, and then when you get past that, you take care of it. It's yeah. You get to see it live in the flesh at ADE.
Touched it. I've touched it. It feels
damn
amazing.
right, Dylan.
Wash your hands.
The question is, are you growing a Monstercat head? That's what the...
Oh yeah, that's a side project.
Edward Scissorhands your beard into that shape. Okay, Protostar, real question now. So you collaborate with other people, even though you're sort of on, you're your own artist on another half, I guess. Was that true? I think it is. But so, what is collaborating like? Is it any different than having somebody that's?
I mean, there's obviously kind of two ways to go around. Like, obviously, in-person collabs have a lot more kind of creative back and forth, like in the moment, and it's quite difficult with like IRL clubs. A lot of the time, one person will be in control of like the DAW, and the other party inputting like stuff in via ideas and stuff. Like do this, do that, and then but whereas with online clubs, I feel like it's more of like you do something and then you leave spaces for the other person to like add their flair or change stuff, and then you send it over. It's two different kind of styles collaboration. I feel like you do it in person and online. I wouldn't really say one from the other. They both have their merits, but with like collaborating with other people, I often have to work with other people that work with FL and Ableton. I use Reason myself, so not a lot of people use that. So I often will have to work with people where we have to bounce sounds and stuff like that. So it's not as easy as Dillon, for example, where he just bounces it and send it over. Usually what we'll have to do is export all the stuff into audio and send that, and then the person on the other end, either me or them, can then put it into our software and then add stuff and chop stuff and do effects and stuff like that. I feel like collaborating online often feels to me like you're almost like remixing a track before it's finished sometimes, whereas when you're working in person, it feels a lot of the time it can feel like it's more of a the both ideas are kind of fleshing together like in real time kind of thing.
No, that's actually a really good answer.
Go
ahead.
I was say I think there's also a different dynamic in collaborating between two producers on the same project and two producers with their own projects. When you're trying to think of like a good analogy to explain, but when you have two people within one project, you kind of have the same goals, same vision. It's a lot clearer from the get-go, what it is that you're hopefully trying to create and kind of what goes into that. Whereas oftentimes we see, things can either be like amazing, we have two visions from different projects come together, or they can just go like horribly wrong. Egos come into play and stuff like that. So I think it's a very delicate process when you have two different projects kind of coming together to create something. But it also sometimes leads to like the coolest and craziest ideas. I think actually it's interesting to think that every KUURO song is a collab. I don't think that a lot of KUURO fans would think of those songs like that, but in a sense, it's no different than Protostar collaborating with Muzzy or somebody else on the label. That's two solo artists. You have two people with unique creative ideas coming together to create something cool.
Yeah,
that's actually
it definitely makes it interesting for us as well when we as a duo decide to collaborate, because that happens as well. Then you have three or even four people in the mix, and it really spices things up. It definitely, I think, can get to a point where what's the saying about
Too many
too many
cooks.
cooks? Yeah,
Use
it doesn't necessarily spoil the broth, I guess, but it does, especially for online collabs. I think at that point you're better off being in the same space where you can give more direct feedback. Like collaborating IRL is more of a like you have the ability, if you hear something, do something cool on the spot, you have the ability to kind of intercept and be like, hey, what if you tried this and that with that specific sound or that specific idea? Whereas if you do it separately, you do have more freedom to kind of do your own thing and get down what you want to show other people before you send it to them. But you'll never know what would have happened, if you had someone to kind of step in halfway through. And yeah, with like more people involved, it definitely gets sending stuff back and forth, because like between me and Nick, like he said, everything's pretty streamlined. We have the same DAW, we both use FL Studio, same plugin, samples, all that stuff, so that works really well. But when you bring more people in, it definitely starts to make things a little more complicated. Not necessarily worse, it's interesting for sure. It's a challenge sometimes in grunge, but it's interesting.
That's why I feel. I was just gonna say that's where I feel like kind of not vetting, but like knowing the person quite well, like, and knowing if you're going to work with them quite easily, it kind of helps. Because if you go into a collab blind and not knowing the person, and especially if it's online, because in real life it can be a lot easier to do that. It can end up in kind of disagreements and like headbutting on certain ideas, and depending on how headstrong people are, then they might not budge on certain things. But then that's why I feel like on in-person collabs, like I said, when you do it online, it's more often that you'll do something and then you'll send it off, and then you have to wait for them to do something and then you send it back. There's no kind of like real-time kind of discussion. Whereas like in person, you don't necessarily have to be touching the computer to be able to do your input. You can just be sitting back, hearing what someone's doing, and then say, "Oh, do this. Try I do this with the filter." Blah blah blah. Give like on the ideas that they can, because most producers have their own kind of producer speak, I guess. So if you said something to one producer, most going to understand what you mean if they're if they're worth their salt, I guess. So the way you can you say to do something and they'll do it, and then you've had your direct input, but you haven't had to don't do it yourself necessarily.
Yeah, just to play devil's advocate on that, I mean, Alex isn't wrong in any way, shape, or form, but oftentimes in live studio sessions when you're working with other people, especially when working with creative types, people can get really enthusiastic about an idea that they have, or whatever, and they can totally dominate the session entirely. And no matter how many people are in there, it really can just be one person doing a lot of the lead work, and not because nobody else is helping, but because they are really enthusiastic about their idea. Maybe other people are like, "Oh yeah, like this is good," but I have some ideas too, but they are like really into theirs, and I don't want to like upset them or anything. So people generally tend to, with creative types, people are, I think, a bit more sensitive, because I wouldn't want anyone to say no to my idea. I want to say no to their idea.
Luke, are you are you sucking anybody right now?
No, not at all. No, I'm just speaking from personal experience, and I mean, obviously, I have all the experience in the world sending project files back and forth. But
I think with everything that we've done, not just for KUURO, but before that, and the kind of like side stuff we've done as well while working on KUURO, we've definitely had a lot of different experiences with writers, producers, engineers, and you come across a lot of different people, and when different people are excited about different things or want to do things their way, some people would kind of refuse to deviate from their path with a project, and others are way easier and like, okay, yeah, sure, just go with your thing. It's finding like a healthy balance in that, I guess. And whether you collaborate online or in person, I think in both cases it definitely helps to at least have like spend some time together beforehand, so that you know each other as well. You kind of understand each other's personalities. It also helps kind of avoid misunderstandings. Like if someone's just really really precise in their feedback, it can come across as kind of arrogant maybe to someone else, while not intended that. So it definitely helps when you know from each other what you're like, so that you just you have the kind of smoothest experience as possible in the studio.
Right.
I think it's really about trust, right? Like when you enter that kind of scenario, and really that's not any different than working on a school project, or collaborating with people in a sort of workspace, or even just hanging out with your friends. There are those people who dominate the conversation, monopolize conversation, and it's no different with creatives. I think that sometimes we can maybe brush it off a little more in like your day-to-day interactions with people, but when you're making this like piece of art and it represents a part of who you are, it can be a little daunting when somebody comes in and bulldoze their way through a project.
For sure.
You might be in the studio being like, yeah, this is great or whatever, and then you get home and you re-listen to what you did, and it's like, this isn't me, this isn't KUURO, this isn't Protostar. And so it has, I'd say, from our experience with artists, those things have a positive and a negative. Ultimately, it's great to like step into a room and do something creative and out of the box that you maybe normally wouldn't do. But that project or that day's work always have to see the light of day. So you don't need to completely avoid those opportunities out of fear that you're not going to be able to have your way. Like some just kind of like go and stepping into the end and trying something completely different. And at the end of the day, if you feel good about it, you discuss putting that song out, or having it associated with your artist.
Nice.
Right, because it's like your thing, and actually, yes, exactly. Which, speaking of which, KUURO, fans really love your artwork, especially with the dark tones. I'm just like, what inspires those?
The thoughts in my head.
So things happen when you stay up until 5 every night.
Yeah, I know, something's got to keep me up. I think they really, when we were spending time, like before it was even called KUURO, when it was just me and Jordan working in a studio together trying to come up with sounds, like they're like in SoundCloud, if you go like all the way to the end, like there are air quote KUURO songs that sound like super melodic and like happy or like futuristy, and nothing like what they sound now. It just happens that when we were in the middle of making a bunch of stuff, we ended up like leaning more towards like more minor sounding melodies and things that are a bit darker, and like that's what we came to agreement that like, oh, this is what sounds really good to us. We like doing this.
I think it's like it was such a stark contrast from what we were doing before as well, that I think to both of us it was a really interesting thing to kind of explore. And like super early stages, I think, before even really kind of deciding on sort of the tone of it. Like really early on, I remember deciding that like black and red, those are the two kind of like main colors that we want to work with. That just kind of feels right. When we had like a bunch of ideas and songs down, it's like, okay, we gotta sort of put together a package that we want to present to the world, and that was just one of those things that fit with it and felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, when it starts with the music and you have a really cohesive idea for what you want your sound brand to be, then the visual aspect of it comes extremely easy, like right afterwards.
It took some time, I think, from our debut release in like October 2016. We were working on the project at least like 2 years before that, trying to really put everything in place before we went to put out the first song. A lot of, well, not a lot, but at least a couple of tracks that we put out after October 2016 were actually already done beforehand, or were of ideas that were started way before and we finished a little later. And like Luke said, there's also a lot that is kind of just floating around on our computer that just never made the cut. Stuff that's completely different from what people would associate with KUURO nowadays. But it was, at some point, it was something that we were considering when we were kind of trying to put everything together.
Yeah, I think it's really important to highlight and shout out all the designers that we've worked with. Like, and starting from like, but we were KUURO, we were working with this girl named Kiki, who designed our logo and a bunch of other stuff. Like, she helped influence a lot of like the graphic art direction. Amanda, Game Shrimp at Monstercat, she's an insane artist, and like the whole KUURO pillars thing that we have in all our artworks, and like the swarm bug and a bunch of other things that people very chief recognize as KUURO, like those were her ideas. Like we had like general base ideas that we would give to her, but then she would just take it as to what she saw the music in her head, and she crushed it from there. And then now working with our guy Audrius, he's done maybe the last year of art for us.
Like that.
Lyric video for a song "Afraid of the Dark" as well, like entirely himself. He goes out and gets friends to model for the stuff that he makes. He's really into it, and you can definitely see the vision that he has for what he does. You can see that in his artwork for sure.
And a lot of that comes with like very little direction too, which is why we started working with him, because like he just started creating stuff for songs that we would do, and we'd be like, wow, like visually perfectly represents what this sounds like to us. So he's like also very in tune with the brand, surrounding yourself with people that, not necessarily surrounding yourself with sycophants, but like surrounding yourself with people who like totally understand your vision is super important, and like it all makes the project look much more banging.
Cool. So we have about go ahead, Or.
I think that's also like a testament to the vision that you guys have for the brand, that you can find these people who can bring elements that are almost more KUURO than you could have even imagined, and you really start to see these projects like growing and expanding, and it's kind of difficult to create this universe all on your own. You kind of have to throw it in the world and then let the world put the additional finishing touches and pieces on it, and that's when it really starts to come to life.
It kind of comes back to what you said about trust as well. It doesn't only apply to fellow producers, but any kind of artists as well. It was just really cool to see like artists after like the first one or two things he did for us to basically be in a position where like, well, kind of just here, listen to a track and let us know what you come up with, and it was so cool to be able to work in that way. And
I mean, it
takes a kind of like, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's literally how it started. Like we didn't know him as a graphic designer. We just knew him as a fan on Twitter who would occasionally make graphic art and like fan art for stuff that we would do. And it got to the point where like we had seen enough stuff from him where we were like, he's doing all of this without us giving any direction, and it's super in tune with the brand. Like we should actually work with him.
Didn't it start out with he did a rendition of the pillar actually? Yeah. Like he basically like the thing that Amanda brought to life, he then did his own way, and now here we are working with them all the time. It's cool things like that happen, how you kind of cross paths and develop these relationships that you really don't expect at all.
That's really cool. I mean, there was that famous story about the guy who could sing. Who could sing? What was the band? Journey or something? So the lead singer went away, and then I ended up picking him out of an audience. So it was really cool. You're such a big fan now. We're gonna work with you. That's awesome. So a couple. Eminence, I guess his computer had an issue, so he's going to be out to the panel, but he'll still be performing later. Also, we've got about 15 minutes, and I'd like to open up the questions to the audience, so hopefully you all don't mind answering some questions from the folks here. Chromatic asks,
Sure.
Protostar, why don't we start with, when you make music, do you try to make your own sounds all the time, or do you sample sounds, or do you do both?
Well, I mean, like most of the time, in for most producers, I'd say samples probably range to like drum samples and noise samples and stuff like that. I think the main thing I'll do is sometimes I'll start like a bank of like idea loops where it's just like it's just like maybe a chord progression or some kind of like kind of melody or something, and I'll pull that into the session. Oh, Dylan's back. Hey.
I made it home.
So, I'll pull that idea loop in and then maybe, use that as like a seed for the rest of the track. And nothing is a really good way, I find, to starting music, for myself at least. It's like, having that one little idea and then building off of that. It can't, create something like from scratch. In terms of like samples, like bass samples and stuff, I'll use like a bass sample here or there, like a preset. If I know what I want, I know exactly like the sound. I can like modify that to be what I want it to be. If I can't make it myself, I'll do that. But most of the time, like when you get to a certain stage in production, if you hear something in your head, you're able to kind of like be able to pull out and like put it onto paper, style-wise and stuff. Especially if you know what your own sound is, which is a whole other thing. Like for example, the KUURO guys, when they went into being a duo, they already kind of had they were already producers before doing that, so they had the experience and kind of they had the choice to be like, okay, we want to sound like this. Whereas if you start like an act like me, for example, where I started my alias like from the ground up, where I was learning to produce, like my style has sort of evolved over time as I've learned production and stuff like that. So if I was to make a new alias now, like a different alias, alias or something, I would have that freedom of, okay, I know how to produce now, so I have the freedom to do like, whatever I want and like, be whatever kind of style I want. There's this two kind of different kind of routes, I think, when you're doing music. So I think it's really cool to see that, like, when you have like an alias that is started after someone already is proficient with producing, they get to choose what kind of style they want to do. Whereas someone like me, like the style kind of fell into place with my years of trying stuff out and seeing what works and seeing how I feel with things.
No, for real, that totally makes sense. It's a lot of years of work, and especially to master that kind of stuff. It's actually
takes forever.
That's actually a good. We had a person in the audience ask, how long does it take to master electronic music? And I think this would be an interesting question.
Never.
I was going to say it's impossible. We're all learning. Like,
we're always.
It doesn't matter how much experience you have. There's always something new to learn.
I think the biggest piece of evidence that supports that is look at electronic music 10 years ago. It sounds nothing like it does today. So there's no such thing as mastering it. Like, there's an ever-changing landscape.
Because the better you get, the more technology comes out that makes you have to learn technology always, like new plugins, new like ways of manipulating samples, and the DAWs update, and like a bunch of things happen. So.
Yeah, it's always going to be like you release something and then maybe like a month or so, like even maybe earlier than that, because sometimes when you finish a song, it takes months for it to come out. So by the time it's out, you can hear stuff that you can improve on the track that's already going to be out like tomorrow.
Yes, exactly.
So
Why did I even do that?
It's a never-ending process of just learning, and you have to kind of learn to deal with it as a producer. Like you can't just sit and worry about like snare is 2 dB too loud, or like or like this is wrong in the track. You just kind of like learn from it and move on, and that's the only way I feel to properly improve as an artist, is to just make stuff, release it, because when it's released you can't change it, and you learn from it, and it's just out there. So just make stuff, release it, and just like put it out into the world, and just be happy with it and learn from the mistakes. You can still think something, obviously nothing you're ever going to make is perfect. You can still think something is flawed, but you can still enjoy it. There's a lot of stuff that I've done where there's certain parts where I'm like, okay, I do that differently now, I could improve this, but I still enjoy it and respect it for what it is. And I feel that can cross over to people who listen as well. Nothing has to be perfect. You can always respect something for what it is, even if there are parts of it where this I feel like this could be different, that could be different, kind of thing.
It's always balanced too, because like I sometimes look back at my tracks and I'm like, oh, that was really creative what I did there, but you find a bunch of problems with track, but also like one little cool thing that you're like, oh, why don't you do that
Oh
anymore?
yeah. And you're surprised how like you came up with that all those years
Yeah,
ago. Like
exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Getting
why
to the
not do
question
that
of
now?
like, I was just going to get the question really quick. Like in terms of mastering electronic music, I think literally everyone on the panel who's a producer is guilty of this. I think we oftentimes make it too much about I need to be a better producer, or I need to be a better sound designer, or I need to get this mix better. And when it really comes down to it, like the thing that's gonna like have the biggest impact on you as an artist and your career as a musician is being a better songwriter.
Yes,
and
100%.
it's like learning that new synth or whatever, like or learning this new mixing technique, or learning this new software is like it might make stuff sound a bit like more pretty and glossy. Not everyone who listens to music is a producer, and a lot of the time the average person who listens to a song cannot tell a bad mix from a good mix,
Yes,
good
I
sound
know.
design from bad design, and it's the writing is
Guilty.
what everyone is really
Yeah,
focused on.
I mean, I do, because I teach music production online. When I have QTs, a lot of the time they'll be asking, questions like that, like how do I synthesize a shaker and all this and that, and a lot of the time I'll tell them, like, well, I can teach you this, but the main important thing, because like, if, for example, if I have a QT and I know what areas they have to work on, I'll try harp on that and be like, you need to work on this and like work on like finishing the songs and stuff and the songwriting part before you start diving into synthesizing your own kick drums and your shakers and all that kind of stuff. Because at the end of the day, if you put a preset from a library, only only like a tenth or maybe 20% of the audience that you listen to, or not even that, like if you choose a preset, you could say like maybe 4 people would go, oh, I know what preset that is, and who cares? Like it doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, it's all about the whole product, the whole cohesive idea, rather than that one little sample or that one little synthesizer that you used, or it doesn't, like at the end of the day, it's just the idea that matters, not it's the sum of its parts,
And actually,
Some
one of the things that all 4 of you are guilty of, but one of the hardest things for a producer to do isn't to write a song, it's to finish a song, to let go of that song. And
I guess for us, it's never truly finished, or you're never done with it, really.
You learn to give up. That's the.
I mean, from our side, like we literally will have to pry these songs out of the hands of the producer sometimes, and so it can be
You'll get it when I'm
very
dead.
vulnerable place to let something like that. But yeah, that's like the hardest thing, and so I think that it's really important for anyone who's aspiring to be a producer isn't to like obsess over the little details, because you'll never think that it's
Careful, Alex.
You coming after me?
Give me my track.
Well, we've dovetailed into like one of my favorite questions to ask artists specifically. What is one piece of what is the one that you wish you knew when you started creating music? Creating. What do you wish somebody had told you?
You're gonna talk for a really long time.
Ready to dedicate immediately.
I mean, yeah, I'd say learn how to network like genuinely, and not just I feel like a lot of newcomers and stuff will just kind of send their tracks around and this and that. But when you network with someone with the intention of not just make a connection for music, but you're actually connecting with them like a person. I did with like John, Quantum. I actually knew him beforehand, like before I started, sending like stuff that I wanted to get signed. And that was a real benefit to actually networking efficiently and like actually getting to know someone that I actually consider now as a good friend. And just about like you need to network to get music signed. These connections that you make, like whether it's going to be like on the business side or through the music side, they're going to probably stick with you your entire life. So you're not just networking for that; you're actually networking just to like improve your quality of life and
Just find the people that you click with.
The people in Sansar.
Yeah.
There you go.
But also there are people that you won't click with too, and like you have to learn how to
And that's okay.
get rid of that.
That's-
That's
yeah,
fine.
that's
It's
absolutely
fine.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like it's fun and it's art and it's creativity, but it's also a business. And like
Yes.
you know, outside of music, in any industry, like you want to do business with good people. You want to do business with genuine
Yeah.
people. And that's such an under sort of appreciated facet of the music industry. You know, you can spend all your craft or all your time, you know, on your craft and being the best in a box, but it's not really matters, or else nothing that you've done in the is gonna make the impact that you want it to make.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know,
That's kind of like, yeah, you know, there's going to be people that you click with, people that you don't click with, but it's the same with you putting your music out there. There's going to be people that like it, and there's going to be people that won't like it, and that's just the way it is. And
You can't please everybody. It's impossible.
no, exactly. It doesn't matter what you do, how you do it. No one. It's never going to be a case of everyone absolutely loves this, and that's
isn't that
just fine.
true?
Most of the time, I'm on the team of people who don't like this stuff. I have to give it like a month's rest before I can listen to my own tracks again. But
Yeah.
yeah,
You know, so that's a good question. And Bagnaria asked, how do you like your experience in Sansar so far?
Oh, I love it.
Announcement?
I kind of wish that I want to try on one of the headsets. I feel like that's a whole different level of VR.
I'm just trying to sit down without my legs flipping out. Also, I'm starting to
Completely
stutter now,
frozen.
so I might have to restart before I do the set.
Beep boop beep boop.
I think my VR stuff is yeah.
Well, you're all part of the Sansar fam now, so you're welcome
Yay.
anytime.
Hey.
That's what's up.
Here you need to network, and also your network needs to be good in order to perform. So that
Oh,
is
God. Oh,
where we're
God.
at. That was good puns. All right, everybody. I think we're about to run out of time. We're gonna let these these guys go get ready for their set, which they'll be performing in about 10
Awesome.
minutes. Thanks again
Ooh.
for
Oh,
joining
yeah.
us, you
Oh,
guys.
man.
Everybody, get your
you.
clap emotes out. Get those clap
Woo!
emotes.
Give a round
Yay.
of applause.
Thank you
There
guys.
we
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Clap for yourselves. Clap for yourself.
Oh, sorry for disconnecting.
Sorry for walking the stage and then coming back on again.
Have a good set.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you guys on in a bit. Bye.